Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel and welcome to the very first No Plot Just Books Book Awards. As you can see, we're in front of my new bookshelves, my favorites and my to-be-read shelves, which are full, don't look at them. And what better way to start the year than to look back on 2024, like every other channel. I love those end of year videos. I know we're halfway through January, but I think this is actually still a good time to look at the previous year. I just kind of came up with some categories. You've definitely seen them everywhere else where other people do book awards. I got a little bit inspired by a few people, like the Book Leo, who does book awards every year. I also got inspired by Alison Page's 2021 reading survey, where I pulled some questions from there. I'm just gonna quickly go through those before we jump into the awards. And then there are other people, such as Kat's Fieldwork, for example, who did like book awards and combined her top 10 books. I love these videos. I've been watching so many top 10 of 2024 videos in the last few weeks, so I'm excited to be adding to this collection. So before we jump in, I want to go through some quick stats, and I feel like my line of work is really showing because I never used to care about those, but I thought it would be kind of fun, especially since I've only just started my channel. That kind of gives you an idea of the types of books that I like to read and how I read over a year. So let's just quickly go through those and then we'll jump into the awards. In 2024, I mostly read... Katara, what are you doing? If you see me looking up, there is a cat on top of this bookshelf. And next to me. I am surrounded. In 2024, I read 110 books, which is slightly unhinged. And of those, 57% or 63 were novels or nonfiction in written word, and then 57% or 47 books total were graphic novels / manga. So I read a lot of manga that really inflated my reading. Of those books, 67 books were part of a series and 25 were first in a series. So I started 25 new series in 2024, which also sounds unhinged. I have no defense. I did read a lot of manga though, so keep that in mind. I read 64 authors and 50 of those were new authors to me. And I think I discovered some really good authors. Wink wink, as we will see later. And my most read genre was, unsurprisingly, fantasy, followed by science fiction and non-fiction and contemporary / literary / historical. And then one last bit before we jump in to the awards. The publication date of the books that I read were mainly in the 2000s. Does that make sense? Is this actually English? Am I speaking proper English? Who knows? The books that I read were mainly published in the 2000s, which actually really surprised me. And even more so, they were published in the 2020s. I didn't expect that at all. I kind of thought I was reading older books, but no, I am mainly reading books that were published from 2010 onwards. I read 27 books that were published in the 2010s and 34 that were published in the 2020s. So only within the last 4 years. I've read a lot of those. And then the other 2 decades that I mainly read were the 80s and the 90s. And that's mostly led, I believe, by one of the manga series that I read, or actually pretty much all the manga that I read, and another series that will be mentioned shortly. I don't want to spoil it, but it's one of my favorite series ever. And that's pretty much it. I've got some DNFs, but I don't want to go into them too much because I want to keep this a happy time. So, some questions from Alison Page's survey. Did I reach my reading goal last year? I think yes. I think I went above and beyond on that goal. I don't really know what happened last year. I read a lot. What's the shortest book that I read? The Orange and Other Poems by Wendy Cope. This is literally 37 pages. I've never read a book that short, and it's literally poems, so really short. Barely even counts as a book in my eyes, but it is the shortest book that I read. And the longest book that I read was The Mad Ship by Robin Hobb, coming in at a whopping 906 pages, I believe. It's a brick. It's a brick. Now, let's jump into the awards. The first award is the best 2024 release that I read. And for this, I have one of my favorite books of the year, as you can imagine, and a book that will stick with me a very long time. I expect to revisit it in the future. And I listened to this on audio and I ended up buying a physical copy, which never ever happens. If I listen to the audiobook, especially if I've bought it on Audible, I'm not gonna buy a physical copy. And this time around, I did. So I really went above and beyond for this book, and I think everybody should read it, and that is The Lasting Harm, Witnessing the Trial of Ghislaine Maxwell by Lucia Osborne Crowley, who is a British-Australian reporter and lawyer, and this is about the trial of Ghislaine Maxwell, as you can tell by the title, which Lucia Osborne Crowley attended the whole way through. She was one of 4 reporters that pretty much lined up every day at 3 or 4 a.m. in the morning to be led into the courtroom. I'm not a true crime person, but I would put this into everybody's hands. Literally one of the best nonfictions I've ever read. The reason why this is the best 2024 release that I have read is because of how well researched and how well considered this book is. This is not about the trial only. This book is about this trial, of course, but it is used as a medium. This trial is like a torch for Lucia Osborne Crowley to hold up to what we don't know about the lasting effects of sexual abuse on victims and all the ways in which the justice system as it is currently set up is not set up to understand victims, and all these things that you might hear in everyday conversation, such as, well, why didn't they go to the police straight away? Or why can't they remember the event that well if it really did happen? She actually goes into the science behind it, what research has shown, and it's just very, very, very well put together. I very much appreciate it. It taught me a lot, and I definitely believe that I will be revisiting this book in the future and I will be putting it in other people's hands. It'll also be interesting to see whether anything changes in the next few years and whether the issues that are brought up in this are just as relevant in the following few years, which I expect they will. It's not like we change society overnight, and it's not like the justice system can be changed overnight, but I definitely think this is a very, very educational read, and I highly recommend it to anyone, even if you're not into true crime. I am not into true crime. It is well worth the read, and it is definitely written with victims in mind. The next award I have to hand out is for a book that lived up to the hype. And for me, that was Cultish by Amanda Montell, which I listened to on audio at the beginning of last year. I'd never read anything by her, but I'd heard a lot about Cultish in the last few years, and it lived up to the hype. It did what it came to do, and it was really interesting. I really liked it, and it was not just about cult, but about all the ways that we have a cultish society. I don't have that much to say about Cultish, to be honest. This is not a book I will revisit, but I was very pleasantly surprised by how much I enjoyed it, and I do recommend it to other people. I realize that I am starting off with nonfiction books. Interestingly, coincidentally, I'm also gonna give Best Nonfiction to The Lasting Harm. Just so you know, we're covering 2 categories at one with this one. Into the other categories. Now, I need to bite the bullet and let you all know who my new favorite author is. Favorite new to me author of 2024. Should be very obvious if you've watched any of my previous videos, because I talk about her non-stop. Spoiler alert, 2025 will be the same, and it is Robin Hobb. Unsurprisingly, this is my favorite shelf, and this is all the Robin Hobb that I've read in 2024. Honestly, it's gonna be a bit redundant from here on out, because Robin Hobb wins favorite author, and also wins Best Fantasy with the Farseer trilogy and the Lifeship Traders. But I haven't finished the Lifeship Traders trilogy yet. But this trilogy right here is my best fantasy of the year, and I will scream to the high heavens about it until the end of time, because it was amazing. read it, please. Now, what is Robin Hobb about? Before we move on from this category, best fantasy, Robin Hobb, the Farseer trilogy, I have to tell you a little bit about it, right? I just told you a little bit about The Lasting Harm. I have to do some Robin Hobb propaganda. The Farseer trilogy is the very first few books in the Realm of the Elderlings, which is a 16-book series. Epic fantasy, high fantasy, wonderful, amazing, beautiful, never been done before, iconic. I don't know how else to put it. I am in love with this book series. The Farseer trilogy, in this, we follow Fitz, who is from the Six Duchies and comes to Buckkeep, the royal court, and is handed over to the royal court as a royal bastard. He is the son of the king in waiting, the bastard son of the king in waiting. And his arrival puts everyone in an awkward position, and he gets taken under the wing of the current king, his grandfather, King Shrewd, who gives him his protection in exchange for Fitz becoming his royal assassin. It reads like historical fiction almost just as much as it reads like fantasy. There is little magic in this first book, and you get a lot more as you go on. By this point, this is a lot of magic. I think Fitz is such a real character. You can tell that Robin Hobb had a son. I'm assuming she had a son, because I swear I was in a little boy and teenage boy's mind the whole way through the Farseer trilogy. Next up, the best science fiction of 2024. Now, in 2024, I didn't read that much science fiction. I typically read quite a lot more, and I think I've had better luck in previous years. I don't think this year was insanely successful in terms of sci-fi, but there is one that stands out, and it is Annie Bot by Sierra Greer, which is a book about Annie, who's a bot. She is a sex doll, pretty much. This is set in the near future, and we follow Annie, who lives with her owner, who pretty much treats her like his girlfriend, but it is slightly frowned upon to have a bot girlfriend, and she is struggling with her humanity, or lack thereof. And it was very interesting. It posed a lot of really interesting questions about AI, which I'm quite interested in the topic of. So it talks of humanity, it talks of independence, it talks of free thoughts and society at large. It poses questions about AI generally, and I enjoyed that it was a near future setting. I think I'm in my AI era. I've realized that is a niche that I'm really into, so I'm hoping to find some good reads this year in that same vein. So if you have any recommendations on books about AI, please send them my way, whether they be fiction or non-fiction. It's kind of a literary sci-fi. It's not heavy on the sci. It's more a literary sci-fi. So if you're not super into the genre, don't be put off by it. I think you might enjoy it much better than other literary sci-fi that have come out in recent years. I won't name names, but much better. Next category, the best historical fiction of 2024. And for me, that was No Land to Light On by Yara Zaib. And this is a book that I'd never heard of. I still haven't heard of it. I've never seen it online. And I was blown away by this book. It's extremely readable, and the writing is very beautiful. There is some beautiful imagery in this, and it's very gut-wrenching as well. This follows a couple. Hi, Katara. She's climbing in the books. I've got a cat in the shelves. Oh well. This book follows a Syrian couple, Hadi and Sama. They're both on a visa in the United States. They've both come to the United States under very different circumstances. And this is set in 2017. Yes. Which is when an act was passed that revoked visas for Syrian refugees. And so in this book, we've got Hadi, who is flying back from Jordan to the United States on the day that this act is passed, and therefore he's denied entry into the United States and he's deported back to Syria, whereas Sama is stuck behind in the United States. If she leaves, her visa will be revoked as well. She's heavily pregnant and she ends up giving birth on the day that Hadi is supposed to come back. And it is the story of these two people who are separated and are trying so hard to get back together. We see what's going on in 2017, and we also go back in time. We see them meet, we see them fall in love, we see them get married, get pregnant. It's a beautiful story, full of so much love, but also full of so much despair. And I didn't know about this act that was passed in 2017, and so it was also educational. This was one of the first 5 stars that I had in 2024, and that was about halfway through the year. I didn't have a lot of 5 stars at the beginning of the year, I don't think. This is a book about displacement, it's a book about love, it's a book about community, it's a book about identity, it's a book about choices as well. And it does so much in very little pages, and I think this book deserves to be read by everyone. Next up, the best contemporary / literary. I kind of put them together. I understand they're not the same, but to me they're very similar because I don't read that many. And the best contemporary / literary book of this year for me was Birnam Wood by Eleanor Catton, which was my last read of 2024, and I read it for our local book club. I had such a good time. I know this is also a thriller type of book because of the second part of the book. It talks about our current politics around the world and billionaires and having too much money and also having really high morals but not necessarily being good people. In this, we follow a group called Birnam Wood, and they are a guerrilla and they're a guerrilla gardening community where they garden on unwanted pieces of land and also on illegal properties. Or private properties, making the gardening illegal. And we also follow this billionaire who ends up also being in the process of taking advantage of the land that the gardening group is cultivating. And they meet and things happen and it gets thrillery, and I really, really enjoyed it. I really liked the character-ish aspect of the first half, and that kind of divided us. If you like the pace to be consistent throughout your book, you might not enjoy it because the first part is quite a lot slower. It's very character focused, you get to know them, and then it goes places unexpected. I really like it. I think it really added to the suspense and the psychological thriller aspect of the second part of the book. But it wasn't a hit for everyone, which I understand. I know she's written The Luminaries, which won the Booker Prize. I haven't read any of her other stuff, but after reading this, I will. There was a really good quote in this actually about being right and being wrong, like the choice between doing the right thing and doing the wrong thing, and how you don't choose between what's right or wrong, you choose between what's wrong and hard. So that is my best contemporary / literary of the year. Next up, because I read a lot of them, I've got a best graphic of the year. And for that, I've chosen the manga Dragon Ball. Dragon Ball was really fun. It is my boyfriend's favorite anime, and I wanted to read the manga before I watched the anime, just because I like to do that generally. So I read the whole thing this year, and it was really fun. I don't have much else to say about it. Everybody knows Dragon Ball. I'm the last one on the Dragon Ball train, and it was well worth it. It was so funny. The manga made me laugh out loud so many times. It is definitely the series that made me laugh the most as well. I'm gonna rapid fire the next few categories. The first one is the most thought-provoking book of the year. And I've already spoken about this book at length, so rapid fire is a good way of doing this, but it is Transcendent Kingdom by Yagasi, for all the reasons that I listed in my November book review. If you'd like to check it out, I will have it linked somewhere. This book is gonna get 2 awards as well. One for the best character, my or new favorite character of the year, and also most emotional / gut-wrenching. Royal Assassin by Robin Hobb. I'm sorry, I realize this is a lot of Robin Hobb spam, but I have to be true to myself. This was gut-wrenching. Robin Hobb has a thing with endings. They're amazing. And as for a new favorite character, Night Eyes. Need I say more? No, I don't want to spoil it if you haven't read it, and if you've read it, you know. Next up, a world that I would most like to visit from my reads, and that is Cairo from A Master of Jinn by P.J. Lee Clark. I want to go to this magical Cairo. So freaking cool. This is one of the highlights of this book, is how well described it is, how immersed you get in the book. Amazing. Loved this fantasy. Highly, highly recommend. 1910s magical / industrial revolution with jinns and magic, and honestly, why wouldn't I want to visit this world? Why wouldn't you? In 2025, perhaps. And then, a character I would most like to have dinner with, I'm gonna pick Ged from A Wizard of Earthsea by Ursula K. Le Guin. The Wizard of Earthsea. That's who I would like to have dinner with. And I think that's it. I feel like I've been yapping for a while. We will now go to the very final category, which is my favorite book content creators of 2024. For this, I don't have one winner. I have a whole lot, and I wanted to highlight them because I've watched and listened to so much book content in 2024 that's inspired me to create this channel, and that's also just been really fun and kickstarted some interesting conversations in my life as well. So first of all, I have Alison Pages, who hasn't made many videos in 2024, but I never get tired of rewatching her videos. Then I've got the podcast Books Unbound, which I really discovered in the second half of 2024. I'd already listened to some of their episodes prior, but I really got into them this year. And then I love the French podcast Livre la Fleuve, one of the best podcasts to have sprung up in 2024, hands down. I've listened to every single one of their episodes. I love their takes, all the variety of topics that they talk about, and how honest they are with their book reviews. And if you are French, or if you speak French, you should totally give them a listen. They're hilarious. I also really love the booktube channel Alex Bouquin en Prada and Misère Pourpre and Anthestésia Lee. So those are all French channels. Again, if you speak French, I highly recommend you check them out. They all have very different tastes in books, and some very, very different to mine. Alex, actually, I think, is spot on the same taste as me, but Misère Pourpre and Anthestésia Lee read completely different books, but they speak so eloquently, and I love hearing them talk about books. They make me really interested in stories that I just never would have thought to pick up, or stories I've never heard of, and they really inspire me to branch out. Those are all the book content creators that I've been loving, and I really, really, really highly recommend you check them out. I think that's it for my book awards. I hope you enjoyed. I hope this kind of gives you a little bit of an idea of what I like a little bit more. I have come up with a few reading goals for 2025, which I plan on sharing with you in a reading vlog. But I would love to hear what your answers are, what your winners are in any of these categories. Always looking for new books to add to my want to read. So please let me know. That'd be awesome. And I will see you in the next one.